Now, without further ado, welcome to this webinar, Connecting Mobility Services on a Single Booking and Payment Platform. Our speaker today is Rosanna. Dr. Rosanna has graduated in 2013 from the University of Constance with a degree in mathematics and received a doctorate in applied mathematics in October 2017 from University Paul Sabatier in Toulouse. In November 2017, she joined the R&D team at Init in Karlsruhe as project manager. There, she is responsible for research projects concerning autonomous driving, mobility as a service, and barrier-free mobility. Dr. Roxana Hess.
Thank you very much for the introduction. So hello from my side as well. As already introduced, I'm going to tell you something about connecting mobility services on a single booking and payment platform. So just an overview of what I'm going to show. So first, I'm going to I guess you're all from a public transport background, but just to have the same wording, I will shortly introduce mobility as a service and what I will understand from it in this presentation. Then I will introduce you to the RegioMOVE project, which is a project in Germany, Karlsruhe. So also about its goals and how the platform is implemented here. And then I have a short conclusion. So let's start. So as said, I first want to say something about mobility as a service, where I found a very nice definition. So I know there are many, many definitions out there, and they sort of say the same thing, but I find this one quite especially nice. So it says mobility as a service stands for transition in mobility, where a consumer buys in mobility instead of investing in transport equipment. So you want people not to buy a car, but to buy the service of mobility. That's what it is basically. And so I find it quite nice. So let's move on what it's providing. So for first, usually you have a mobility platform if you want to provide mobility as a service. And usually they pool several mobility services like bus and train for a start, and usually maybe some car sharing or bike sharing. And then there is no sort of what you can imagine to include, like the coffee when you wait for your train or whatever. However, there are so many different kinds of platforms out there, and they provide very different services. So I give them some names for now. So for first, I would have some information platforms maybe that provide information on how to get from a point A to a point B. So the most popular probably would be Google Maps, or there are also Citymapper in some cities and these kind of things. So you can't book a ticket there, but you get information on how to get places. The next step would be a marketplace, which also has an information platform. But in addition to this, you are redirected to the mobility providers where you can then book a ticket. But you still need different apps or different registrations to use these mobility services. The next step then would be a broker platform, how I called it here, which has an integrated booking platform, which means that you don't need to leave your one app. So usually the user experiences the platform as an app. So you're not redirected to other apps to book your tickets, but you can book them in the platform itself, and you all have your services in there. Then a sort of little bit different would be a reseller platform, where the platform itself can define products like, for example, they would buy a contingent of tickets and then they can sell it like in combination. For example, if you go by bike to the train station, then it's cheaper than if you buy it separately or something like that. So these are the different kinds of platforms that I wanted to introduce you to, so we have a same setting for the presentation. Another wording that I want to clarify here, how I'm going to use it. So I will distinguish between multimodal and intermodal. So intermodal is also multimodal, but the other way around wouldn't be the same. So multimodal is just generally if you use different modes of transport. Like for example, today I go by bike to the supermarket, but tomorrow I use the train to go visit my sister or what else. And intermodal would be if you use within one trip. Like, for example, you go by bike to the train station to then jump into train and go to your destination. So where you combine different modes of transport within one journey. So that's how I'm going to use these two words. And then seamless mobility is another wording that's very interesting, I find. So it's kind of straightforward. So you want to go from A to B and you wonder how. And now you enter it in your application. And what you then want to have is that you only sign in once. You don't want to have a couple of apps to use your mobility services. And then when you open the app and enter your destination, you then want to get different alternatives, possibly even intermodal. You want that they respect your preferences that you may have set before in the app, and also to consider real-time traffic information. Like you don't want to have an option where you go by car and there's a lot of congestion, so this wouldn't make sense if there are then faster alternatives. Or if you're local, you might not need a routing, then you want to be able to book directly when you open the app and enter your destination. In any case, you want to be able to select the journey or book your ticket, and you want to receive all tickets with one click. You don't want to change between apps and look for the correct ticket and make sure that they fit together from the timing and these kind of things. So it would be nice if this happens all automatically. During the trip, so when you then finally got your tickets and you start going, you want real-time information. And if something goes wrong, like your train is late or something, you would like to have alternatives so you get into your destination with the least possible delay. And you also don't want to have like many different bills, so it would be nice to get just one at the end of the month where you can see how and where you traveled and how much it costs. So this is quite straightforward with the seamless mobility, how you want it to be. This has some implications which are not that obvious sometimes. So for example, you might be a user who has already subscriptions in place in your city. Like for example, you have a public transport subscription which allows you to use public transport in an area for free because you pay a monthly fee or something. So of course you wouldn't want to pay extra in your mobility platform application, but you would want the platform to know about this and don't charge you again. In Karlsruhe, where we implemented the RegioMOVE platform, for example, there we had the possibility for the bike sharing to have subscriptions where the first half an hour is free. So you also wouldn't want to pay for it in the platform app, but you would want to have this as well there and don't be charged double. Another thing is you would like to have a logic in the booking from your platform. This means that, for example, if you want to book a car, like for car sharing, but the station's a little bit further away, and you go there by bus, let's say, but someone at the same time books the same car as you, and if the other one was a little bit faster, so let's say it's the same second that the system gave it to the other one, then you end up with only a bus ticket without the car sharing reservation, which then makes the bus ticket very superfluous. So you want that intermodal bookings make sense. So you want the system to have a logic to book these and to make sure that you either have a valid chain of tickets or none at all, or an alternative which makes sense. Okay, then also you want to be guided through your trip, to have your last mile with a bike sharing bike. So let's say you travel by bus and your last mile goes by bike, then it would be nice to be guided to your bike sharing bike after you get off your bus. This was quite funny, for example, here in where we implemented our platform here, because this is not a usual use case for bike sharing companies. So in their APIs, it might not be, the information might not be there. So usually you go to a bike and you rent it, and then it's not necessary for the application to know where the bike is because usually the user is sitting on it. So it wouldn't need to know where it is. But if you have intermodal trips, then it's always quite a little bit different. So there are other things to be considered. The trip monitoring is also a little bit more complicated. If you have intermodal trips, you need then to always check the whole chain and see when you need an alternative. For example, if you have a car sharing car which is stuck in congestion, you need to return it at some place and you then go by bus. You will want to know which bus to take if you're stuck in congestion, late for that. Okay, and also which you would want to have is, I mentioned the intermodal bill already on the slide before, but also you want to see what you traveled and how. So if you have, for example, a not integrated booking platform, like with, for example, a marketplace, you would have your history, you could check it, but you would have different apps for it. And you would need to split it up yourself to find out if the account that was withdrawn from your credit card or wherever fits the trip that you made. And in an integrated booking platform, you can then have all in one go, and you see it in a chronological order, which makes it much more transparent to the user what he has done and what is withdrawn from his account. Customer service is also a little bit more complicated when you have intermodal, or with multimodal it's already also more complicated because you need to connect the different customer services from the providers, and you need to have one instance of the platform, usually of the platform operator, where the customer can has access to the different customer services, and which then also, so the customer service of this point needs access to the booking platform to see what actually the customer has traveled, and to give him advice on how to solve his problem. Okay, and so these kind of things, like this seamless mobility, like I described it here, we wanted to do with our project here in Karlsruhe. We call it RegioMOVE. So the slogan is in German, it's very difficult to be translated. So it means everything but maybe teletransporting or something. So to get from one place to another without, like by magic or something like this. So this is where we wanted to do the seamless mobility, and I just give you a short overview of all the partners and the dates. It was funded by the European Union and the federal state of Baden-Württemberg. So this is the state where Karlsruhe is located. And we started it in December 2017. It has a project duration of 3 years. So it's still going 1 year, but the application, so the platform itself, is already a demo version, and there is a closed beta version already launched. So for now, it's only a very small group which has access to the platform, but we will gradually open it up till summer. There's a sister project which is doing all the communication to the municipalities. So also in the RegioMOVE project, there is not only the platform, it's also the mobility hubs, which means the municipalities need to actually construct them and then maintain them. So there's a lot of communication necessary there. So the project partners, we have 13 partners in this project. So for one, we have the city of Karlsruhe, of course, and other municipalities. They are providing the infrastructure and the data. And then we have 3 research partners. For one, the 2 local universities and research center for informatics as well. So the 2 universities, they are concerned with the ports where they are going to be located. So they do the mobility quality analysis and demand analysis to see where they are best located. And Research Center for Informatics, they are building a logic which is considering the preferences that the user sets in the app to be integrated into the routing. Then we have 3 IT partners. So this is for one Init, so we are doing the booking and payment platform. The PTV group is providing the intermodal routing engine, and RegioMOVE, they are doing the front end, so the mobile application. And of course, we also need mobility providers. Without it, it doesn't make sense, obviously. So this is the KVV, which is the Public Transport Authority of Karlsruhe. So of course, this is the public transport, and they also have the bike sharing here. And the Stadtmobil is the car sharing company that is the biggest here. Okay, so what's the goal of the project? So first, we want to provide intermodality, and very importantly, from a single source. So the one face to customer and all the seamless mobility that I just told is the most important aspect. And we also don't only want to do it in the city itself, but in the whole region. So this means, of course, also in the city, but the Karlsruhe region has also very rural aspects, which makes it quite difficult. But the city of Karlsruhe wants to also increase the possibility for people in rural areas to use public transport and other mobility forms other than their car. Okay, so the RegioMOVE project is divided in 3 sub-projects. So one pact is concerned with the contract. So there need to be a lot of contracts to be set in order to have all the searching partners in one opinion, I'd say, and to build one project. Then it's support project, which I already mentioned, where there are mobility hubs constructed. So the mobility hubs are, let's say, stations where there are different modes of transport combined. So it's very easy for users to change between the modes of transport. So usually there would be public transport for a start, and then you would have at least car sharing or bike sharing or other options. Okay, and now I want to concentrate on the third sub-project, which is the provider sub-project. That's where the platform is built. And so the user experiences at the RegioMOVE mobile application, in which he or she can plan and book intermodal trips. So to understand how this is done and that it's quite rather complex, I want to introduce you to kind of the system architecture. So for a start, so you see a user up on the top level of the screen, and you have also mobility providers, and now the user wants to go from A to B and using one or more of the mobility providers. So he wants to use an app, usually, and this needs the front end and the back end. So you don't want to have it all in one, because you want to have the back end running separately in order to have all nice and secure and separate. Then this back end will need to have a connection to the mobility providers. Otherwise, it wouldn't know where are the bikes and cars, and yeah, it needs to provide the information to the user, and in a form that it's giving intermodal information. To provide intermodal routing, we need an engine for this, which also needs the information and an API to the backend of the front end. And then if the user wants to set preferences in the app, then we also need to consider those, which then will need to be handed over to the routing engine. Okay, so now we have simplified architecture of an information platform, but here we also want to book tickets. So here we have an integrated booking platform. This means that we need another branch in our system architecture. In RegioMOVE, we have done it like this. So you need another whole bunch of APIs to all the providers, which you see down there in pink. And you need so in RegioMOVE, we have a payment service provider. This is up in the right corner, who does the business to client clearing and the business clearing. And in the middle, you have a big intermodal ticketing and booking platform. And this is the part that I want to look into a little bit closer, as this is the part where which we are providing and which is doing all the ticketing. So we remove all the things that we don't need here, and we shift out of the way everything that is outside of the booking platform, so we can see closer here. So you may have noticed that I sneaked in the customer service on the left bottom corner, because they also need access to the booking platform. Otherwise, they couldn't give any useful advice to the clients that are calling. Okay, so what's looking inside there? So the backbone of our booking platform is our ticketing and fare management solution, which is called Mobile Vario. There we have our user management. Of course, the user data needs to come in from the app, which then, of course, needs to be secured. We do this with the state-of-the-art OAuth implementation and authentication. And so we need an identity server, which is in between, to make sure that everything is nice and secure. Also, there is a lot of verification necessary, like email address verification and phone number verification, to make sure that everything is as it's intended. But the heart of the booking platform then, after we have all set the user data nice and secure, is all the booking APIs. So of course, we then need to have the APIs in place to book the tickets with the public transport company, the bike sharer and car sharer, and possibly, so for RegioMOVE, it's intended to include other providers. So we started with 3 because it's already sufficiently complex, but of course we want to have more providers. So for example, for summer, it's planned to include the e-scooters that are get more and more popular, and maybe taxis as well. And then with time, we will include more providers. So the whole booking platform has 12 interfaces. So you see it's also a little bit simplified. And the handling of these interfaces is the backbone of the booking platform to make sure what I told before, that the tickets are booked in a valid sense, which is suitable for the user. So you don't end up with a trip that you can't actually do later on. Okay, so I want to summarize maybe the benefits of this integrated booking platform, how we implemented it in RegioMOVE. So probably can do some things as well with, like, for example, deep linking, but some things are not really possible, and others may probably result in a lot of traffic on your system, so on your interfaces, but maybe it's possible as well. But here we wanted to have the benefits of, as I said, the integrated booking platform. So you have only one app for all your mobility services. You register once and you book everything in one go with one click. As I told before, we can respect a subscription in the RegioMOVE platform. So the bike sharing subscriptions that I mentioned, and also public transport subscriptions that the user may have. This also means that you can connect with the accounts that you may have already with these providers. So if you're already a Nextbike user, that's the bike sharing company here, then you can just connect it, and the platform already knows everything about your subscription. Also, what's very important here is the intermodality, and as I said, with the logical booking engine, and one intermodal bill at the end of the month. So here in RegioMOVE, we found out that not wise to withdraw also all the money at the end of the month. We would get reliability problems with this, because if you use car sharing for a month, you can get quite a lot of money together, and if you then get a customer which is not willing to pay, you may have a problem. So you would want to avoid this. So we withdraw the money in shorter times, but we get one bill at the end of the month to don't spam the user with email. So, and there's a lot of potential for the integrated booking platform. So for one, we want to integrate more partners, as I said already, and probably RegioMOVE will also one day have these bundles, like, or let's see, versions where you can go by bike to the public transport station and then pay less for the bike, for example. So it's a benefit for the user here as well. Okay, so, and if I would like you to take anything away of this talk, it's that a mobility platform is more than the sum of its components, or at least it can be if you have a, like, for example, an integrated booking platform, and that's what you want to have. You want it to be more than the sum of its components. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. I guess there might be some questions.
Hi, Roxana. Yeah, that was a great presentation. Thank you so much. It was extremely informative about the MAS systems as well. And so we have two questions coming in. And so the first question coming in says, how do you split the profit as a MAS platform? Who facilitates the splitting of the profits?
Okay, so for example, an intermodal trip would be, the tickets would be just added for the moment. So like we have, if you go by Nextbike to the by bike sharing to the public transport station, and then you go, so the user would pay its bike and then the bus ticket, for example, and we split it up like equally for the moment. So not equally, but Nextbike gets its part and the public transport authority gets its own part as well. And platform operator is also the public transport authority. And of course, there is, like, for example, the payment service provider costs something, but the platform itself is built within a research project which was funded. And for the moment, it's not that profitable for the city, as it's still in a research project. So this is all not yet really set how they will split up the profit. At the moment, there is very little profit. So it needs to start then it will be considered how the profit will be split afterwards. As at the moment, it's not that big an issue.
Okay, thank you. Just as a related question to that, there's a few other questions. I'm just going to skip this one because it's related. It says, for your booking system, do you take one payment from the customer and distribute it in the back end to the mobility providers? If so, how is liability handled?
Yeah, that's a very good question. That is for liability, but was not possible to do it to first hand it to the back end. So we need to do it at the provider itself. So we hand over the request for the ticket from the provider from the booking platform, but the payment information itself needs to be transmitted from the mobility provider to the payment service provider directly. Because I'm not sure if the legislation is the same in Northern America as here in Europe or in Germany at least. If we do a detour through the booking platform, then the liability would change and go from the mobility provider to the platform operator, and that's something that the platform operator here, the public transport authority, didn't like. So the mobility provider is transferring the payment information directly to the payment service provider.
Okay, thank you. Next question, how is privacy dealt with in the platform as a whole?
Yeah, also very good question. So the data is securely transmitted only to the central user database, which is in the booking platform, and only the relevant data. So for example, you can't use car sharing if you don't hand over data. I mean, you first, at least you need a driver license or something like this. So it's not possible to go without data. So we hand over the relevant data to them, and the user needs to check several data protection confined to them. So in the app, we do it like this. So if you don't want to use car sharing, of course, then we don't hand over the data to the car sharer. So you can choose in the app which provider you want to use, and only to those we give the data. And then you need to find to their data protection, and you're informed about it. And you also need to confine to the RegioMOVE data protection as well.
Thank you. So the next question is a bit long, so bear with me. If you need me to repeat it, just let me know. It says, a challenge to integrating booking and payment across modes in Canada in one or multiple platforms is the lack of open payment APIs and standards. There are cities, for example, Antwerp in Belgium, where the government has mandated that shared mobility providers provide APIs. Can you talk more about how mobility partner APIs were handled for your project and who owns the accounts? Do you have advice for developing APIs?
Okay, that's also a very good question. Yes, standards would be very useful for this. Unfortunately, here in Europe, so at least in Germany, we don't have that many either in RegioMOVE. So the booking platform needed to handle the APIs that the providers have, and these were not standards. So this is also a big problem that we deal with, that they're so different, and it needs a lot of communication between the providers and the booking platform and the front end provider to integrate them. This is indeed quite a lot of work. So for the moment, I can't say how this could be simplified besides having the country or the to set up a standard. This is indeed a problem here as well. So I mean, if you want to set up in your city a mobility platform, for sure you will first need to analyze the situation that is there and what kind of providers you have. Yeah, so a big problem in RegioMOVE as well was just the politics about it. So this one project pact, which is considered the contract, it is, to my understanding, was the most difficult part, because you need every partner to actually do what is best for the platform. And this is not always the same interest, like it's conflicting interests of the providers themselves. And this is also, I guess, a problem with the APIs, because then they need to give them features that don't serve them immediately, but only for the platform.
All right, thank you. I think that touched on all the points there. Next question says, do you feel that it is important that users are also able to register for different mobility services such as car share, bike share, etc., in app rather than be directed to another website or app?
I find it very important. So, I mean, here we have 3 providers, but already there I find it inconvenient if you would be redirected, especially as it has implications on the functionality of your platform, because then the platform usually wouldn't know, for example, about subscriptions. So if you're redirected, you subscribe to another service and the services don't know about each other. And then you might need to, for example, if you go from A to B and you change mode in between, and then you need the timing to be, I mean, you want to have a valid journey. You don't want to start your journey before you ended your first, and kind of thing. So the first leg of your journey. It all needs to fit together. And then you have problems of if one is delayed, what is the other doing? And if it's all in one platform, then you need to think about what you do in these cases of delay and who is responsible for this. And what do you do if, for example, your train is late and you miss the next leg of your journey? Who will reimburse you if you're the customer? And these kind of things. So it's not maybe that you only need to log into different kinds of systems. Personally, I find it also annoying because I need different passwords. I need to think about which provider I subscribe to and these kind of things. And so mobility should be something that you don't think about. You just have one app, you say, I want to go A to B, and you don't care what happens in the background. You just want to have a valid journey that brings you from A to B. So, and for this, I find it very useful if you don't need to leave the app.
Okay, thank you. Does the booking platform do all the booking, or does it just bring the user to the chosen mobility provider's platforms?
Yeah, so the booking platform is doing all the booking. We never redirect. It's all happening in the background. So what we wanted to do is, I mean, you have a very big complexity with this kind of mobility as a service because you have many providers, and we wanted to take all the complexity from the user and put it, I mean, it doesn't go away, it's still there, the complexity, but we wanted to put it into the system and not have it on the user. And so we do all the booking, we never redirect the user.
Okay, thank you. And then the next part of that was saying, does the platform choose the order of mobility options? For example, is transit or active transportation shown first?
This is also a very good question related to politics, more or less. So we already considered this, but we will probably need to reconsider it again. So we promote public transport and we like to show it first. So for the future, we also thought about having the possibility that the user can order it in the way he or she wants. For the moment, this option is not there yet. So we order usually public transport first and then intermodal and then bike sharing and then car sharing. And we also have the private car, but usually put it at the bottom because our operator is Public Transport Authority and we are funded by also state and city. And of course, for sustainability reasons, they want to promote public transport.
Okay, thank you. And then a bit of a follow-up on that one again. Does the platform have an option for accessibility or are not all options accessible?
Also very good question. We would like to include this at one day. We're not that far yet, but it's in the roadmap somewhere. For the moment, we have some accessibility information in the app, but not all of it is accessible. That's still a to-do.
Okay. So the next question here, it says, what are some of the key considerations that you would suggest to other cities that were trying to set up a similar platform?
So if you want to set up a mobility platform at a city or in a region, I think the first thing that you would want to do is to analyze your infrastructure and what kind of providers you have there and what kind of mobility there in your region and your city. And then you would need to think about what you actually want to provide to your users. Do you want to promote sustainable modes of transport, or what do you want to do? And so usually I think to have a mobility as a service off the shelf maybe might just maybe not be suitable everywhere. It might be, but you really want to consider what you want and what is already there. So if the situation is like that there are very little providers in your region or city, then you would need to figure out how you want to combine them. And if you maybe need to, for example, build mobility hubs to actually make it possible or improve your mobility quality. And then if you have decided on what to do, you need to also decide on how it should be for the user. Do you want the seamless mobility, or how do you want to do it, and how comfortable should it be for the user, and how deeply integrated should everything be?
Okay, thank you. We had another question come in. It says, did the platform achieve the adoption that you were expecting?
This is unfortunately a question that I can't answer yet, because we are still in the closed beta. So for the moment, we only have a closed user circle, and I'm also looking forward to know if the adoption is as we hope it will be, but we actually don't know yet.
Thank you. Another question came in. Do you think it is important that the platform is owned by the government, or could it be privately owned?
So I think it makes sense if the platform is owned by the government, because it makes sense to have sustainable modes be preferred in your city, and also if the government can choose how they want people to move, and they can direct the mobility in their region. And if you have a privately owned platform, the city might not be able to have any influence on what kind of modes of transport are heavily used in the region. And I find it more suitable if the government owns the platform and can use it as an instrument to develop the mobility in their city.
Okay. Next question. What was the most difficult part of implementing the RegioMOVE platform?
It's very interesting because, so of course we had technical problems and misunderstandings in technical things, but usually you can all solve them within a suitable time frame. What takes a very, very long time is all the contracts, and to have all the different interests of the partners to find compromises to get along and to find a solution that we actually want to implement. And then also all the interests or compromises don't make any sense if it doesn't confine with data protection or liability and these kind of things. So to find a solution with where every partner and also is happy with, and also all the legal aspects are considered, I find this was the part that took a long time. And then to find a technical solution was also difficult, but usually it's easier, I'd say.
All right, thank you. Our last question for now, it says, you mentioned some other sub-projects in your presentation. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the sub-projects which is concerned with the mobility hubs?
Yeah, sure. I mentioned it on the side where there's three parts. So third part where we build the mobility hubs, we had academic partners in there who first analyzed the demand in the region and the mobility quality like this. And then they so they built models and ran some simulations to find out how the mobility quality will improve in which regions when mobility hubs are built. And according to these models and investigations, we selected 7 locations for ports, which will be built till the end of the year. So these ports especially will connect all 3 modes of transport, so public transport, car sharing, and bike sharing. So we didn't put a port in a place like the main station for the moment, because usually the mobility quality is already quite good there. So we put them in places where it actually enhances the mobility quality for the people living there, and we put them throughout all the regions, so also in smaller villages where it makes sense to have easier access to public transport, like with First Mile or Last Mile.
All right, thank you so much, Roxana. That's all the questions that we have for today. I just want to thank everyone that joined us on this call, this webinar today. And I especially want to thank our presenter, Roxana.
Thank you as well. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Of course, no problem. Just a reminder to everyone that a recording of this webinar will be made available in 1 to 2 weeks on our website on the Center of Excellence.